This is a test of whether I can go live from Detroit on my own.
There we go.
Did you start that?
I hit start, but somehow my image wasn't in it, only yours. So I started you for a solo podcast for a second, I think.
I know I was feeling the whenever I'm solo, the one person I always think of for some reason is Colin Cowherd. I don't even think he's that well known outside of like maybe niche sports ESPN
Herd.
viewers, the herd. But he always did like 3 hours by himself, and most people have a co-host, and obviously we've got the three of us. So I always think of Colin like, how do I? All right, if I have to talk about mortgages for 30 minutes by myself, where do I begin?
Another good one would be, could you do a Scott Hansen if we're gonna go into sports references?
What's that, Red Zone?
Yeah, jump into all the different other mortgage podcasts that are going right now and real estate podcasts that are going right now. I only know of like
Two
one
mics
at this time. Yeah.
Oh, at the same time as us versus
Yeah.
just in general? Yeah.
You could hop into Brian Views at 1 p.m. Yeah. But yeah, happy Friday.
We should do like a lead-in. We should do like a lead-in on TV. There's always like the late show, the late show, the really late show. We can do like a lead-in from ours to Brian's.
Yeah, there's a natural. You don't have to log off. Cable TV experience. Yeah.
So yeah, it seemed like the one funny thing I heard from a bunch of people, so it's either true or everybody just said the same cliche, was that this year's holiday season was weird because the Wednesday to Wednesday. Like everybody mentioned it to me.
Yeah.
And so you had the right idea, which was just like skip the whole thing. You were just like, see you later.
Mine was kind of weird where I was like working a lot that week, the first part of the week of Christmas. But then basically when Christmas hit until this Monday, I was off,
Monday,
which is like the longest I've maybe ever taken off. Even though it was only like 5 business days, it was like 11 calendar days or something. Yeah. Hey, Rick.
Hey guys. Yeah, sorry that I was about a minute late. I was on Jeremy Potter time, so
yeah,
I appreciate the the patience and thanks, Brock, for. Are you drinking a? Oh, it almost looked like a Guinness. I was like, you're drinking a Guinness. This is great.
It's always that's one of the beautiful things about coffee and Guinness is you can't tell the difference. So,
this is going to be a show. This is awesome. No, I'm excited. I'm glad that we're all together in this new year. I know, gosh, it's amazing how the year has already begun, and we're already almost the middle of, for all intent purposes, like the middle of January. And the year has sort of started fast, and yet it's like an overcast New England day as far as the industry as a whole. There's just everything. I was talking to one realtor. I'm in Connecticut right now, and one top producing loan officer and a realtor, and they were just saying that the market just seems to be frozen. Like the people who are moving have to move. The deals that have to do are necessary, but there's so many people just sitting on the fence trying to figure out where the market's going to go and how's the administration gonna what's going to be in this bill that's going to be forced through Congress. I mean, there's so many unknowns that it's just, but that kind of uncertainty in the market freezes or at least suspends hiring in tech spaces and some of the tech companies that I advise. They're just kind of holding off to see what's happening in the market. And then on the lender side, there's a top 10 lender that's laying off a bunch of staff because their processors and administrative staff because of they anticipated a different start of the first quarter than what it's looking out to be.
Sure.
So it's really I thought of you when I heard that yesterday, Jeremy, about the top 10 lender shedding some of its operating staff because it's so reactionary. It's an industry that's it's very emotional and it's very reactionary. And my response was, here's a company that's got a lot of cash in the bank. They probably could hang on for another 6 weeks just to see where the market is going to turn or what's going to happen. But yet they're gonna lay off a bunch of people and probably hire them all back in a month or two when the market sort of potentially sort of stabilizes or swings in a more positive or confident direction.
Yeah, that's a tough call because when you talk to, especially financial consultants or financial advisors to IMBs, they always tell you to be like early or be proactive with cost versus late. However, to your point, one of the things that's kind of got me curious is I think we're going to learn a lot in the first few days. Forget 100 days the way it used to be with the presidency. I think it's worth at least waiting until Tuesday, the 21st, to get a sense of what the priorities are going to be. Because almost everything is just a media game right now, not actual executive orders or actual things, as far as I can tell. And I'm no expert, but I would say like waiting till at least Tuesday and then being like, okay, now we're seeing what is happening or what is going to happen. Because you're right, uncertainty freezes everyone. It freezes investors, it freezes companies, as you said, it freezes consumers. So I don't see why we would get more certainty on the 21st, but we certainly will get indicators that you can then make strategic decisions off of for payroll, for different things. But I think you can't count on transactions, particularly purchase transactions this year. That would just be my take. If you debt consolidation,
I love it. You
take.
definitely can't count on purchase transactions this year.
No, you'll get some.
I will not be buying homes.
Nobody's going to buy a house. Why would you?
It's just so funny to hear it so matter of fact, because I don't necessarily disagree with you. It's not like purchase transactions are gonna I mean, you can count on purchase transactions just from the level as we're hoping to count on in 20. It's not like it's gonna go to zero. I mean,
life
it's gonna
events. Sure. You can
I know,
say
but,
there
I
will
mean,
be
there'll
life
be-
events. There will be life events that happen,
Yeah.
and houses will be bought and sold. What I'm saying is, how do you build a strategy around?
I wish there was a
life
market
events?
ticker. I wish there
You
was a
can't-
housing market ticker behind you as you talk. It's like this big curve behind you tanks. Like there's an LA dust
Zero
fire
homes
behind
purchased
you.
January
Like-
2025 on the Jeremy Potter analysis.
I know. Thank God you're not running a public company right now, Jeremy. Like everyone would be running to the hills and like getting their guns.
I mean, to be clear, I would perhaps work on the exact language with my PR team.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah,
framing has to be the same, because one of my big complaints for the last few years has just been the echo chamber of let's just work harder, let's just believe, let's just whatever, when the reality is we're not actually making enough structural or interesting changes to protect ourselves. We don't play much defense in this industry. It's all like hope and it's all enthusiasm, which is awesome. That's why we love it. That's why we're still doing what we're doing. But if it was me and I was trying to build a strategy around life event purchases, that's a really tough call. So I would just say like, okay, whatever my baseline purchase transactions have been in my market, I'm going to work off the baseline and assume everything else is debt consolidation.
Well, I was just going to say it's an industry of baselines. I was telling one news outlet that we should expect to be somewhere probably in between 2023 and 2024. I don't think we'll exceed 2024 numbers, which is right around 1.8 or 8 trillion or so. And then 2023 was what, 1.4, 1.5 trillion. So if we fall below 2023 numbers, there's a lot of companies that are in trouble, like real trouble.
Yeah. I was looking at
tremendous consolidation.
I was looking at it a slightly different way, but same numbers.
Unwanted.
Right? Yeah. For existing home numbers, we were existing home sales, which, is basically like where we play for the most part, is people trying to buy existing homes. Is 2021 7 million existing home sales, 2023 about 4 million. And I think 2024, I don't know if we have final numbers yet, not in the source I was looking at, but it's like, I think maybe similar, slightly lower maybe. But
so you think 2024 is at 6 or 7 million sales?
No, I think no, I think like 4.
Yeah.
Million.
Well, 4.8.
4 was 2023.
Yeah. 2024 is a little better than that, right? But still.
Here.
Yeah. Search that, because I think 2023 is like 4.5, and I think 2024 is going to be probably about 5.5.
So I always go to Let me just really quickly pull up December's
house. But my point being, big picture point is that almost half, like home purchases almost got halved between 2021 and 2023. It's not going to get halved again. It's 4.1. 2023, 2024.
Rock's right. Existing home sales is 4.1.
Yeah.
Total home sales is going to be 4.6.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was looking at just the
existing 4.1.
Yeah. So
got it. Well,
good new homes. Yeah.
So just for clarity, home sales is different than mortgage originations because there's a lot of property. There's a lot that are cash, right?
Yeah, you have to do 70%. You have to do 70% of it.
That's why I said.
So originations in home sales has nothing to do with refinances. So if we do $1.4 trillion in purchase and another $300 billion or so in refinances, we're at about 1.6, 1.7. I think 2023 was more like one. I think it was like 1.4, 1.5, and I think 2024 was about 1.7 trillion when you combine both purchase and refinance and then the small percentage of non-QM transactions that occurred, right?
Why don't you walk us through, Rick, when a CEO of an IMB or a production leader in an IMB sees that number and then sees this one company lay off people, let's say, what are the next 3 steps that you say, if you see this and you see that, what do you tell them to do?
I'd look at
if I'm running an IMB, what do I do?
I look at 2 things. One is what's my cost to originate, and if it's above $10,000,
which it is everywhere. Come on, let's be clear.
Well, at NFM we're at 2,500, right? And so a lot of the companies that have invested in outsourcing and real technology, you're below that. This is the great divide, right? Because you have most there's 28,000 mortgage originators in the country, but of the 150 or so that do above $1 billion a year. The problem is most companies are above that $10,000 marker, and that's where it gets down to cash in the bank and kind of what your goals are. Because you can hunker down. I mean, we could be a small IMB and hunker down in your local market. Be comfortable with a couple $1 million in the bank, not take any risks, and just kind of coast. Right? You're kind of maintaining because those small organizations often will have loan officers that have long-term relationships with the owners, and they're getting a lot of special treatment from the owners because of the small nature of the business. But so it depends on who I am, right? If I'm a top 100 IMB, I'm looking at my cost to originate, and I'm looking at my cash in the bank, and I'm looking at my profitability, obviously. If in this business, if I'm cash light, you absolutely have, and people just don't want to, people just are so reluctant to do a deal. And I'm not saying this for selfish purposes. I'm genuinely saying that if you don't have the cash, or you're kind of scraping by, or if 2023 looks really hurt and it really could be devastating if we repeated 2023 this year, you absolutely should be looking at a partnership or some kind of capital partnership or an acquisition or something with another lender. Number one. Number two, if I have the cash, I'm gonna ask myself the question: how much money of that am I willing to lose this year by investing that into growth? And I'm gonna go into growth mode, trying to go after loan officers within a 100-mile radius of where I am. This is not a year to say, if I'm headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia, and my footprint primarily is in the Southeast, this is not a year to open up a branch in Montana or in Minnesota or Wisconsin. And the problem is that the sales strategy for most companies are so like, when the business comes to me, I'll just take advantage of, I'll just open up a branch in Florida or open up a branch in Texas. And those are losers. That's a losing strategy. You have to intentionally say, I'm going to contact every loan officer within a 100-mile radius, and I'm going to sell seat at the table, turn times. We're a family company. We got a great culture. You're not going to be one of 5,000 loan officers. You're going to be one of 30 or 60 or 150 or one of 250 loan officers. The problem is, mortgage companies are very smart in capital markets and how to manage the money. They're terrible at recruiting and growing. They're just terrible.
Let me ask you this, because I've been working on this theory this week, and you both are familiar with my crazy theories, and so I'll throw this one out there. We heard for years, going back to even before 2018, but certainly 2018 to the pandemic, and then since, about consolidation. And we've all kind of been waiting for this moment that never came, where a bunch of companies needed to exit. We saw some with like a flurry at one point, maybe, I forget what that was, 18 months ago or something. But I was actually wondering, Rick, what you think about this theory, which is the consolidation we're seeing in real time is actually kind of hidden a bit, because what is happening is we're losing the bottom third of every company rather than losing companies. So instead of losing sort of the middle third of the market where brand names or companies are actually closing their doors, we're actually seeing that the underperforming, the bottom 25%, the bottom 30% of every company is actually what's being consolidated away. And so only your large producers are going to survive. And that'll be true of the individual as well as of the company. That the big get bigger, and that means the big branch or the big producer in your shop, as well as the top 10 are getting bigger, because we're just going to see pieces of companies just get wiped away rather than
I agree with that.
Itself.
No, I agree with that 100%. I think, one of the acquisition strategies that we've seen in the last 4 years is it's so much cheaper and easier and better to give the money that you give to a seller, to an owner, to give to the top producers and just to take them, right? Mm-hmm. And that's where, top producing loan officers today, even middle producing loan officers today, it's almost like doing an NIL deal with an athlete, right? Like you're giving them a couple $100,000, you're going to lock them into a couple year deal, like a couple year clawback, and you're going to enforce it vigorously. But you're basically buying into someone's past production, their social media presence, their influence with the realtors and builders on the social platforms, and you're buying into that social strategy, and you're basically doing an NIL deal with them as opposed to buying whole companies. If sellers are smart, they would, or owners are smart, who are light on cash, and who are really concerned about repeating 2023. If they don't have a plan B in place, they're just stupid. I mean, they're just denying reality. They're just investing in hope as a strategy. And this is not a year to have hope as a strategy. It's just absolutely not a year to just sit back and to just hope that rates are going to save us come April. And we can sort of, you just got to determine how much money you're willing to lose. If you got $6 million in the bank, for your net worth, you're in jeopardy. I mean, if you're up $10 million, you fall down to 7. Those are material events you got to report to warehouse lenders. You got to report that to HUD. Those are substantial reductions in your net worth. And so you got to ask yourself how much money, and you can burn, if I added 20 branches and you average, you're going to lose 60 to 80 grand a branch, all of a sudden you're tying up, $300,000-$400,000 worth of capital in potential, and just tying up your capital, right? And then all of a sudden, if you lose some of those branches, you'll probably lose another 30 or 40,000, maybe 60,000 on those branches on the way out.
That was the question I was going to ask Rick. Was so with this NIL world that we're talking about, how long do top producers even stay these days? Obviously, it varies, but like if the best way for them to make money is to continue to move around and get, completing the NIL reference, like that's what we're seeing.
Top producers are sticking through their contracts because they don't want to. Because like companies that companies in the top 5 or top 10 are going to go after and enforce the clawbacks. And you look at the top lender in the country, they will definitely. Like the day you could be there 3 years. If you resign 2 years and 355 days in, they will come after. It's not prorated. They will come after you for the full clawback. You know, so I mean, it's serious business when you give out a couple $100,000 to an individual when they don't take that seriously.
They're locked up for 3 years.
Oh yeah. So top producers aren't jumping.
Yeah.
It's the small to medium producers.
Well, I'm just trying to think if they're going to lose money for how long. They're going to lose money for all of 2025 potentially. You know, like then it's like if you lock someone in for 2 years and you think they're going to lose money for one of those years, that's not a very good equation for an owner.
No, it's not. Well, especially if you don't have servicing. I mean, there are companies with large servicing portfolios. They have the cash to burn, and that's part of it. That 2023 was the year to lose money, and that's okay. If you have the money to lose and you want to grow, like any investment strategy, you're going to lose before you're going to start to gain. If you're making the right moves on you might say, take my rook because I'm going after your queen, right? That's fine. I'm happy to lose my rook or my horse, right? But if you don't get the queen,
great metaphor.
NIL and chess, man,
yeah.
We are in it today.
Well, the NIL deals is a real. It's not a. Good.
So I like the NIL deal because I think it's the right comp for the talent and the way that we think about talent. One of the things the startup world does in order to create a stickier vesting period with reasons not to leave is equity. Have you seen a trend, or if you haven't, why haven't we seen a trend where that IMB owner you just described would actually go, you know what I can do? I own 82% of this company, or I own 85% of this company, or I own 100% of this company. Why don't I bring in my top producers in this moment and make them stickier that way?
Some companies are. Some companies are. Some companies are doing that. It's funny. I would say that it's equity is a liability in the mortgage business.
Say more about that. I like it.
Any amount of equity above 9%, your name is going to be on the guarantees for any of the warehouse lines, unless you're able to negotiate with the warehouse line to not have personal guarantees on it, right? And typically that takes a relationship and a period of working relationship and a track record. Most small to mid-sized companies still have their personal guarantees on it. Equity is kind of irrelevant unless there's a liquid event for the organization, right? Or unless and if the company's profitable, then you can pay dividends based on the equity, it's based on your equity table. But it's just equity, I think, is fool's gold.
Yeah, there's not a lot of IPOs that are going to happen with lenders, right? And that's kind of like,
and the public markets,
the only way you can turn equity into money, but it's like by far the one that makes the startup ecosystem.
You have to pretty sophisticated leadership team to make equity work to actually, for the shareholders. I mean, look, the very small. There's a handful of people that did very well with Loan Depot, did very well with some of the IPOs. But the problem is, the average employee who has a little bit of equity with some vested options of 3 or 5 years gets screwed.
No, that would be one example of why it wouldn't happen. So yeah, great. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's for every example it works.
Yeah.
For every example it works. For every example it works. There's 100 examples where it just screwed the employee. So I mean, the problem is we're suckers. Like, it's human nature to say, like, yes, I'm going to buy $1,000 worth of lottery tickets because that one ticket could make the difference, and then you lose the rest of your life and you never make it. Yeah. I still buy them. I'm one of the suckers. So I'm not saying
you can't lose. You can't lose if you don't buy. So
well, no, exactly. But so I don't know. I mean, I think this could be a great year for innovation because look, shy of mortgage originations, with mortgage origination being flat to being scary, there's going to be a tremendous amount of pressure for companies to whittle down the cost to originate. Outsourcing is going to be big this year. AI is going to be massive this year, and investments in tech is going to be massive for companies who have the cash to do it.
I think that the way that this budget cycle works, the way that technology works, I think a lot of people kind of already baked what they're capable of doing this year. And I wonder how many people are comfortable pivoting or rethinking what they said in October or November, or whenever that strategic planning happened, because there is a certain amount of technology capture in this industry where you're subject to your vendor's capabilities and you're subject to your LOS capabilities. And so if you didn't make plans for that, and or you tried to plan, like, let's say you're old school in this business and you just kind of went to MBA annual and you're like, it's a cyclical business. This is one of the cycles. I'll keep doing what I'm doing on my roadmap. What you're saying is, like, you could have baked in decisions and assumptions that are different now, and it becomes really difficult to revisit those 4 to 6 months after you made them. And to me, I think that's one of the reasons I'm not actually as enthusiastic about innovation, because those innovation decisions needed to be made 6 months ago.
Yeah. Oh, I agree with that. I mean, and that's the problem, is the industry is so reactive. Even the top 10 lenders, for the most part, I mean, I would say the top 10 lenders are actually pretty proactive, actually, in making these longer term investments. But most companies are super reactive, and they don't have to spend the money. They don't spend the money unless they have to, whether it's on compliance or whether it's on investments in technology or whether it's on, protecting consumer data. It doesn't. No one's going to say, yeah, I want to spend an extra $500,000 just in case something happens.
Right.
They're going to say, I have to spend $500,000 because we got burned.
And also, I think there's always the tension we talk about on this show between cutting costs and increasing lead gen, right?
Yeah.
So when you, like, Varun Krishna, the CEO of Rocket, did an interview this week. Housing Wire posted it as a podcast, and I listened to it. I shared it with a couple people. There was nothing new or different in it, but it was a real tension between trying to make my team members more efficient and effective with technology and possibly AI, and trying to make the consumer more interested in interacting with my company and my platform through technology and AI. And those are just constant tensions. I get it. That's what being the CEO is, allocating limited resources to your business. So you have to kind of spend a little bit on both. But when you spend a little bit on both, you don't really get the full benefit of either. And I do wonder how much concern, uncertainty, and anxiety around lead gen and the ability for AI to help lead gen quickly actually ends up eating the operational lunch, meaning ends up taking all the attention away from the cost cutting and operational efficiency that you mentioned. Or if you're trying to do both, it's really tough. Yeah. Especially this year when you didn't plan for it already.
Well, you don't realize the cost containment strategies when you implement technology like that right away. It's always a cost before it becomes a savings, and so that's the part. I got to jump back into my meeting, but you guys keep going. This show is going to get so much better after I hang up the phone. And Brock, I didn't realize your hair growth was that intense on your face. That's incredible. I've never seen you with a man.
Vacation beard extended by about.
You've never looked more from Maine until you do right now. This is incredible. I can't wait to see your back someday.
Well, I'll see you in New England soon for that.
Yes, next week, brother. Yeah. We'll talk to you guys soon. Keep going. This is the best show ever. I love it. It's going to get better.
See you, Rick. I'm voting for dropping off as well, because I've got a couple other things I got to get done.
Yeah, I was just going to say one thing. I was going to say one thing regarding Rick's point that I wanted to rip him for, but now I really can't because he won't interrupt me. See, he's at the top of the call. He was talking about how he's seeing some very quick layoffs, right? Right now, the rate environment isn't what people thought. The expected volume isn't what people thought. And then on the other hand, every single leader that's speaking in the industry, you just mentioned the Varun conversation on Housing Wire this week, is talking about internal efficiency with AI, internal efficiency a million other ways, but let's just say for the sake of argument, AI. That eventually, there's no more volume happening, right? The same amount of mortgage volume, maybe less. More technology, more AI, more outsourcing, I think, as well. It's not as sexy to talk about. Is it just going to be a structural layoff again? Or like maybe it's not a short-sighted layoff. Maybe it's another structural layoff. I really hope that's not true. I don't definitely think that's true. But I think I might slightly disagree with what Rick said at the top of the call, that like in 6 weeks they're going to need to hire those people back. I don't see that necessarily, especially if the investment is in AI efficiency and the ops roles are the ones in question. I really regret saying that. That's not what any of us are hoping to see for 2025. The amount of people in the industry is only contracting and contracting and contracting. We don't want to see that accelerate unnecessarily, but that is what AI does. So it's, what do you think of that?
I think you're spot on. I would say you've distilled it down to like one key question, which is trust. Are the operational leaders and the executives that have to make that decision when, if ever, are they going to trust that they can do the volume without the hire back? Because old habits die hard, as they say. And if let's say that cliche is true for a reason. If it's true for a reason, it's very hard to not hire back when that's been your move for 20 years or however long. Now, we have newer leaders. You and I have not been through all the cycles, all the different ways that some of our predecessors have. So if there are folks there who do trust technology and go, look, we don't have to do the cyclical old habits, lay off, hire back, but if old habits die hard, then they're just going to do it because that's the way it's always been. And you end up with the AI and the headcount. And those are the companies who are really in trouble because they're spending on both at the same time. I just don't know how many of these companies in the top 10, top 15, top 100 that Rick's talking about are going to do enough evolution of the platform so that they don't have to hire back, whether it's
because that would be a bad leadership decision. It'd be a bad capitalistic decision as an owner, as an operator, to invest a ton in AI to improve your operations and hire more operations people and be doing less deal flow, right? Like,
I think that's what happened in August.
Or let's call it.
I think that's what happened in mid 2024. Was I'm doing all these things I'm told to do for efficiency and technology. Some had to do with AI, some didn't. But basically, like I did what I was supposed to do to make myself more efficient.
Yeah, that was like the focus of 20.
But I got sort of good news at the end of the summer, and so I hired everybody back. And I think that's the company that Rick's talking about that's most at risk now. Is that exact company? I spent the money on the technology. I still hired
a 2-week refi boom in September that everyone jokes about. It's like not really a joke. Like, yeah, it did happen. Yeah, September, October, I don't remember, but
that's yes. So I think you're right to ask the question. And I think the differentiator for 2025, it sounds like we're identifying, if we had to put a headline on this, the differentiator is whether you're going to believe the changes you made matter or whether you're going to go back to your old habits. And that might be as simple as the companies that make it and the companies that don't.
Yeah. And maybe operations starts to look really differently where you need a different role, different types of role to be, AI, more like tech employees, right? Like fewer higher paid employees. Like
I was hard on purchase earlier, but a lot of the high priced NIL salespeople that Rick's talking about are because of purchase. If you make refi self-serve, then what we might end up seeing in 2025 is that refi gets increasingly self-serve, and the only operational investment you need to make is like around the edges in purchase because you've done enough with your servicing book or with your current book to get refi back to where it can kind of just self-sustain without a head count. I don't know, but that would be a tremendous differentiator for those that have that ready.
Yeah. I'm a little less doom and gloom on purchase than you, but I totally understand I just think there's so much pent up demand of people wanting to buy homes. Like 2 million fewer people than usual have been buying homes per year for a couple of years now. That, at some point that will catch up. Maybe it won't be this year, but I think that's a gap of 4 or 5 million people that normally would have bought a home, like quote unquote. Hard to quantify that. Hard to turn that into any sort of actionable metric, but. I think purchase, like in a lot of ways, we've had steady rates for a year now. Like, should we just start talking about it as steady rates and not as, capitalism? Yeah, not as the world. It's just steady 7% rates. I mean, it's affordability is terrible on home prices and insurance prices going up and all kinds of other reasons. But I'm starting to think that like you just sort of need to reestablish the narrative of like the industry is actually pretty stable. It's not like a great version of stable. It's like a conservative, slow version of stable. But should we just think of it that way?
I think you're right. I think that way could lead to very quick trends. And when I say trends, like I do think information moves faster, and I do think people make bigger decisions faster than ever before. So like some of the things I'm always looking for, people wanting to buy a house in a more affordable market, people wanting to buy a house off the coasts in a more affordable market. I mean, I do think those things can move faster. If real estate and mortgage, I think, had more of our act together, we could start changing those narratives nationally. But it is such an individualized business with these individualized regional brand leaders that there isn't someone setting that tone. There isn't really. I mean, you'll see like a big time real estate agent on CNBC every now and then, like Ryan Serhant or something. Like you'll see that person on CNBC, but there really isn't a narrative in the mainstream media. There really isn't a narrative in the financial media that says this is what's happening or this is what could happen. It's very dependent on that like localized personality. I think for better or worse, that in some ways has been defense from what we're talking about, but in many ways it leaves the consumer anxious, I guess is my point. And I don't think forest fires, political uncertainty, economic uncertainty, global uncertainty help that. And that's kind of
no. This specific moment is brutal for a million reasons. But if we extrapolate to the rest of 2025, hopefully it's looks kind of like the last few years, maybe a little bit better because people are used to the market. Like it's kind of what I'm thinking. One other quick fun thing for you. I was reading this somewhat famous cryptocurrency blog. It's like a some fake name pseudonym writer, like all crypto things basically are. And they were comparing crypto to the real estate market. Kind of interesting, like comparing some of the supposed shit coins to to some of the markets that like went up really quickly in the Sun Belt and have blown up a little bit, so on and so forth. But for your live from Detroit sake, they were comparing the Midwest, and Detroit wasn't one of the go-to examples. Indianapolis and a few cities in Ohio, they were referring to as the stable coins. They're saying like it's just like it's the same. Affordability is roughly the same. Like it's you kind of know that home values are not going to go crazy up, not going to go crazy down. And I just thought it was interesting to put that in another metric. So the next belt is the stable coin for real estate was more or less the takeaway.
Maybe we need a coin. I don't know, Brock. This could be our chance. We could get off Real Fridays and have a coin that's backed by houses in the stable cities. Yeah, and we'll just call it the next coin.
People reaching out to start real estate coins in 2021. Let's get back into it.
I was getting coffee this morning at one of my favorite spots in West Village, and there's a listing across the street, 3-bed, 3-bath, 2,100 square feet for $255. And you can walk to my favorite diner. So I don't know what more you need to hear from me on the opportunity. 3 beds, 3 baths, 2,100 square feet, $255. Come to Detroit, live across the street from my diner.
Maybe it's time for me to move back.
Please do. You could be a homeowner. For knowing you and your, New York lifestyle, you could probably buy that house for cash, just knowing how flush with cash you are. But
so they always say early stage startups, you make a ton of cash.
If you do, we'll broadcast from Norm's Diner on our first show when you're back. So.
All right. Well, I'll go to Norm's Diner, but I'm not sure about moving back to Detroit. But good chatting with you. You should see if you can attend that conference for in New Hampshire to speak with Rick and I in a couple weeks.
Another one of my favorite cities. So as long as we're talking favorite cities, Portsmouth, New Hampshire is definitely in my top 5. So
I'll add you to that and see if we can, because they want us to do effectively a Real Fridays show. It's a Friday.
On stage.
So bring it up here. All right, man. Have a great weekend. Enjoy all the playoff football.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Right.